Our message affirmation today is the pieces of my life are not the whole of my life. And indeed, this is a wonderful thing to take in, to digest, and to understand. As we heard in our scripture lesson, we read from John 4:35 through 38. Christ is talking, and as we know so often, so many of the things that we read in the scriptures from Christ, that they're metaphors. They're meant to be evaluated and changed through all times because different circumstances and situations happen to people during different generations. And yet, the words always ring true, and we need to be mindful of what the true meaning of his words were. And so when he was talking at that time, he was talking about the harvest, and he was speaking to the people saying, don't sit here and say, well, let me just wring my hands and worry because it's going to be another 4 months before anything's going to come of this harvest. And he is telling the people, behold, I say unto you, lift up to your eyes and look in the fields, because you know what? They're ready to be harvested. He who reaps and receives wages and gathers fruit for eternal life, so that sower and reaper may rejoice together. For you have to reap that which you did not labor. Others have labored, and you have entered into this labor. So I know that sounds a little complicated, but basically what Christ is telling us is that there will be times when we will do the work. We will be sowing a field, and we may never realize the harvest of that. And there are other times in our lives when we're going to go to a field where we didn't do any of the work. We didn't do any of the sowing. We're just going to reap and harvest. So oftentimes there are fields in our lives that we are in, and we may do the work and receive nothing. And other times there are going to be fields of our lives that we're in where all we're doing is reaping. And I imagine for a lot of people, you've found yourself at a period in time where you think, my gosh, all these wonderful things are coming, and I don't know why. There was nothing I did to deserve this, but this great stuff is coming to me. And other times you may find yourself thinking, gosh, I've done all this work and I put all this effort and energy into this, and it's just not panning out. And then, of course, you raise your hand if, like me, you know somebody in life who says, life is so unfair. Nothing ever works out for me. And, of course, today we're talking about the reality that we need to be patient, and we need to understand that there are fields that we're going to work in which we're going to reap nothing. But that doesn't mean that we are meant to have lives of lack or limit or illness or poor familial or loving relationships. It just means that, we're going to go through life and we're going to be in a different field. And as we think about these fields in life, there are often the roles that we play in life. So many times in life, I think we spoke about this a few weeks ago, the different roles we all play in life. We're fathers, we're mothers, we're parents, we're children, we're spouses, we're brothers, we're sisters, we're whatever our job title is at work, we're just a variety of different things. And all of these are different fields, and not one of them is the entirety of your life. So we need to be aware of and accepting and open to this idea that the pieces of our life are not the whole of our life, because so often we may get so attached to a field. We may become attached to the fact that we're the caregiver for an ailing parent, or we are a spouse, or in a certain job in our work. We become so attached to that field, and we think that that's it. That's the whole entirety of our life. But we know that we have so many fields that we are in life, so many different circumstances, situations, so many different roles that we play, that if we are in one field and we've worked very hard and we haven't seen the benefit of that, that doesn't mean that we are being looked upon poorly, that Christ isn't giving us all the wonderful things, and our Creator, the divine, isn't giving us all the things that we are meant to have in life. It simply means that in that field at that time, that one you're not going to reap. Somebody else is going to reap. I imagine a lot of us in our lives have at one time or another seen a circumstance or situation where we've done a lot of work on a project or in some circumstance or situation, and somebody else seems to get the reward. And we may think momentarily, well, gee, that seems so unfair. But we've also, as I mentioned earlier, found ourselves in circumstances or situations where everything is coming to us and we think, what did I do to deserve all this greatness? And it's just so unbelievable. And so we need to understand that our life is dissected into so many different fields and to not become so attached to one. And if somebody else is rejoicing from the labor of your sowing, then we need to rejoice with them. Rejoice with those who are reaping. So if you have sown and not reaped, but someone else is reaping the benefits of your work, rejoice. And then know that indeed this is going to be something that's going to come back to you, but it could be, it's in another field, it's in another section, another sector, another project, another thing you do in your life. I know I have, for some reason, I don't know, this entrepreneurial spirit, and there have been some ventures that I have invested a lot of time and resources into that just haven't taken off. And I've had to just say, well, this is just a pit of my money and my time and my energy, and it's not going to go anywhere. And so, you shut it down and you feel like, a bit of a failure, like, wow, that, it's a shame that didn't come to be, that didn't come to pass. But to let go and walk on and realize that in other areas of your life, you are going to. And sometimes you're going to walk into a circumstance or situation and you're going to be overwhelmed with blessings and you're not going to know why. I remember last year, out of the blue, I was getting all these accolades from the mayor and attending all these things, and I was kind of bemused by the whole thing. I thought, what did I do to deserve this? I felt kind of silly and out of place. And yet, when I was preparing and reading this material, it all made perfect sense because, of course, there have been so many fields that I've worked in. There's been so many areas in our fellowship and just individuals along the way when you've tried to reach out and lend a helping hand, and maybe you haven't seen the benefit of that. You've given your part of it and you walked on, and somebody else reaped the benefit, the reward of all the work you put into that person. And so, of course, in life, there will be those fields that we work, but they aren't the entirety of our life. They're just one piece of it. They're just one piece of it. And so as you go through the week, our goal is, and hopefully everybody gets to set aside a little bit of time to be prayerful and meditative and think on the things that we talk about on Sunday, because, of course, the things we talk about here aren't just for this building, then we leave and then go and do whatever else. These are practical things that we take into our everyday life. And so get out of the habit of projecting yourself and your expectations in the future. Going back to this idea of sowing the seeds and waiting for the harvest, oftentimes we, as human beings, as is a human experience, we do as Christ was telling the people of this time not to do when he said to them, do not say there are 4 months yet until the harvest. Go and see that right now the fields are already ripe and ready for harvest. And we in life do this so much. We get to a place and we project our happiness into the future. Or we get to a place where we are projecting our expectations into the future. How many times have you heard or possibly even said yourself, and I know I've done this, if I just get that new car, then I'm not going to have these problems and my life is going to be great. If I can just get that new place to live, I'm not going to be so cramped. If I can just get that new job, then I'm going to have this income. Everything's going to be great. We project so much of our happiness and so much of our expectations into the future that we aren't necessarily heeding the words. And as Christ said, don't sit there and wait these 4 months. The harvest is ready now. So live in the moment. And we talk about this being mindful and mindfulness and getting to the place where we are living in the moment rather than holding back and not reaping in the joy of life because we're projecting all of our expectations and all of our happiness on something in the future. Because as I mentioned, we are always going through phases. We're working in different fields. We're working in different fields. And so if we're working and we're sowing our seeds in one field and we stop and we just stand by and we wring our hands and well, I've got to wait. When this harvest comes in, then I'll be happy, and then I'll be able to be a loving, giving, wonderful person. Why, we know that, of course, that's going to bring you frustration and strife, and you may then turn into one of these people who's, oh, life is so unfair. I did all this work, and I sowed this field, and I was so patient, and I tended every seed, and I watered, and I dug the furloughs. I don't know, I'm not a farmer, but anyways. But I did all these great things, and yet there's no harvest for me to reap in. And we need to understand that in life, we're in different fields at different times. So think about that this week. Are there things that are holding you back, that you're just halfway living, that you're just halfway giving yourself the full joy, the full mindful experience of living in the now and enjoying the now, because you're projecting your happiness onto your expectations of what's going to come in the future? If I can just make this happen, if that just happens for me, if this just happens for me. But live in the now and know in the now, and also have faith and know that indeed your divine creator has nothing but great things for you. Because when we sit in that place next to that field waiting for it to become time to reap, we are filled with anxiety and worry and upset. And of course, as we talked about the other week, fear and faith are incongruent. They can't exist in the same sphere. So if we are projecting, I have faith that this crop that I have planted is going to reap a beautiful bounty for me, but at the same time, we say, oh, I'm so fearful, there's nothing I can do, and what if it doesn't come? Those things are so incongruent, we're sending such opposite messages out into the universe, and so we need to be of one ideal faith in all times, in all circumstances, in all situations. And also make sure to rejoice. If we have worked and we have sown the field, and our time has come to move from that field, and somebody else seems to come along and reap and get the reward, rejoice with them. We don't want to be bitter or upset or anxious, because again, we're sending out these mixed messages into the universe, rather than just saying, I have faith that my divine creator has nothing but the best of things in mind for me. And I need to understand that fear and faith are incongruent. I can't walk around with both of those things and expect that I am going to walk into that pasture and reap this wonderful, wonderful harvest, because I am emitting these completely incongruent energies into the universe. And so when you think about your life, again, the pieces of your life are not the whole of your life. So if you have, as I mentioned, I have had experiences where you have been entrepreneurial about something, or you've done something, or you've worked with somebody, or you've tried to mentor somebody, and you never saw the benefits of your work, but later on somebody else saw the benefits. Rejoice in that, and know that indeed, when your time comes, when you reap rewards from the work that somebody else has done, they're going to rejoice with you. And in all things, we're going to rejoice. And the good news is that we need not live projecting our expectations into the future, but know that now, at this time, all that divine spirit has created us to be, to have, to know, and experience is in the here and now. We need not always make change in our situation to see our blessings, but change our thinking to see the blessings of great happiness, great health, great prosperity, and loving, fulfilling relationships. So indeed, from our perspective where we are right now, we may see things as so dismal and bleak, and we need to know that indeed, we don't need to change our situation as much as we need to change our thinking about the situation. And these things are so elemental. These are just the universal law of physics, where every action has an opposite and equal reaction. When we give, the reaction is we receive. So when we give love, we receive love. When we give a helping hand, we receive a helping hand, and so on and so forth. And so this is a dynamic thing that in all these different fields that you work in, if one isn't reaping for you the greatest of harvests, don't become dismayed, and don't lose your faith, and don't get into a place of fear, of worry, or lack, or limit, but know that, it's the next field, or maybe the next one, that you're just going to stumble in, and suddenly you're going to reap the harvest, because your Creator created you to have all great things. So in every circumstance, in every situation, know that indeed it is only good that your divine Creator wants, and make sure that in all circumstances, in all situations, you're sending out that positive message and positive mind energy of faith. And don't let the fear and the doubt and the worry about lack and limit and health challenges and relation challenges clog up and get in the way and become inconsistent with that faith belief, because then, of course, you're sending all these mixed messages, and who knows how to unscramble that. So stay in a place of faith and know that the pieces of your life are not the whole of your life. All right, I'd like to invite you to join me in prayer. Eternal and loving Spirit, we thank you so much for sending the way shower, Jesus the Christ, to give us these messages, to let us know these truths, these universal and dynamic truths, that indeed we are meant to have many roles in life, and that we understand that each individual piece of our life is not the whole of our life, but that indeed we are meant to reap and reap bountifully, and that indeed it is our faith, it is our constant and unwavering faith that leads us to all great things that you have divinely created for us and divinely created us to have. We thank you in the name of faith, hope, and love. Amen.